How we consume media these days is such fucking clickbait journalism that's like, go as negative as possible so people will read what you actually have in your headline, which is something we also feel, right? Like, who wants to listen to a based conversation?
When it comes to consistent denying of rights, there's no worse place on earth than Afghanistan to be a woman.
Does it really take that much? Like, okay, you want to have money, power, but do you really have to do this stuff to these people? You put a guy there for, I don't know, 50 years in prison.
One thing that we could do, for example, that could happen politically, is to stop the export of weapons to Sudan. Right now, weapons are being exported still from the UAE and from Russia.
What do you do with liars when those liars use the lie to gain power and money and influence and control of our entire planet? What do we do?
In my country, being a woman itself is a crime.
In my country, it is illegal for a woman's voice to be heard in the street.
In my country, my creative freedom can cost me my blood.
I have a refugee protection, but I'm invisible.
I have a refugee protection, but freedom is not free. You have to buy it.
I don't even have a country. Try being an activist when you're stateless.
I have refugee status, but without NGOs like ReFOCUS, I wouldn't have any support.
I am a recognized refugee in Europe, but I'm still being stopped at airports for holding a refugee travel document.
In ReFOCUS, I can be myself, an artist, in a safe place.
In ReFOCUS, I can be brave in my art and reconnect with activism.
In ReFOCUS, I can create media and teach others.
I stayed here because of ReFOCUS. I bet on ReFOCUS because there is no creative borders here.
Our community wants to say thank you to everyone who has been so generous with their support. But we still need your help to ensure our community continues. You can help change someone's life just like ours by donating today.
Welcome to our Christmas holiday episode. It's our in-house episode, and not in a very Christmassy mood. We decided to record an episode about what all went wrong in 2024. What are the big fuck-ups that, in our opinion, should not happen, should be handled differently, are still happening, and we do not see the end of those problems. And what we decided to do is that we decided to make a fun / frustrated and bitchy episode about all of those things here in-house with some members of our team. So today, except for Rasheed and myself, you will have Doug, whom everybody already knows.
Hey, everybody.
Yes. You will have Jeffy, who's connecting with us from Lesvos. And Jeffy is in our marketing team, but also is a journalist. So happy to have her here. And we will have Florian, our fundraising guru, who's also supporting us with marketing and has many opinions on many topics.
Many opinions.
So you're perfect for this episode.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, to make it more interesting and fun, we have this cookie box here where I usually put Christmas cookies for the team and students
Just
here.
for me, I think.
And usually Rasheed eats all of them. What we did is we put all of the bad things that happened in 2024 here into this jar. We will randomly pick a topic and we will complain about it for exactly 7 minutes. We will have a timer and we will get to just say everything we want about this. Maybe we will find some good solutions, maybe not, but this is our right as podcasters to just simply complain about things. Who wants to start and randomly pick
I can pick one.
Okay, I'm setting the timer. Wait.
I'm gonna go with Sudan.
Ooh. Sudan is Jeffy's idea. Yeah, let's put this to the side. Okay.
Yes, exactly. I wanna bitch about Sudan. No, but in Sudan, as I'm sure you guys know, is facing a major humanitarian crisis right now. But politically and in the media, it's being very much overshadowed of all the other fucked up things that are happening in our world right now, like the situation in Gaza, in the Middle East, and in the Ukraine, that is, for obvious reasons, taking a lot of attention. But right now in Sudan, more than 25 people are at risk of starvation, and over 11 million people, which is about like half the population of the country, have been displaced. This is about because of a conflict between the Sudanese army and militant forces. It's a really complex situation, but basically we know the facts. We know what's going on in Sudan, but politically, not a lot of things are happening. And one thing that we could do, for example, that could happen politically, is to stop the export of weapons to Sudan. Right now, weapons are being exported still from the UAE and from Russia, which feels like such a crazy thing. There is an embargo in Darfur, but still weapons are being exported to this incredibly fragile zone where there's so much human suffering happening right now because of the political situation.
And you know, Jeffy, for me, this we recorded one episode about Sudan, and Jordan, who was the guest, she was telling us about this horrible situation and how it's basically impossible to go inside the country as a journalist or even as a humanitarian to bring humanitarian aid. And a friend recently also went to the border because even working with one of the largest organizations in the world bringing humanitarian aid, they couldn't cross, and the organization also didn't want to risk the life of people. So it's great that you're talking about the solution of embargo on a weapon. For me, what is so concerning about the situation is the day-to-day operation and how people live. You know, this is something that is like beyond any imagination what is happening in the country. Also from the perspective that we really cannot fully know because journalists are not being allowed in.
She mentioned that they have like. She mentioned they have like a 10-year ban on media. Nobody can go. And the ones who went there, they're so brave, like Jordan. And for me, it's more personal because one of my best friends, he lives in France. He was here. I met him here. And he told me about his area. So it was a little bit safe. But the issue is they didn't have doctors. So his father died because they didn't have a doctor. So he didn't lose his father because directly of war, but he lost many, and his mom now just waiting for an operation. Nothing happened. So the whole country is just in a in a place where nobody can do anything because they don't know also who is fighting who. That's the issue. And Jeffy, she mentioned the UAE. And the last time I was watching some videos, so the rebels found a lot of weapons, and they made a video saying, "We got your weapons, and we're gonna fight you now." So it's very chaotic there. Nobody knows.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, it's essentially a power struggle between these two generals or warlords, and it's so crazy in 2024 that power-hungry maniacs can cause so much human suffering towards civilians, and that there isn't much more that we can do. I feel like there should be more that can be done. But yeah, like you guys said, of course, obviously it's difficult both for aid workers and for journalists to get into the country. I have heard testimonies that have been collected by journalists who are, for example, on the border in South Sudan, meeting a lot of the people that have fled to South Sudan right now. And the things that they are telling are really, really horrible. It's a really bad situation for sure.
I mean, it stayed with me, the story of Jordan, and we will link this episode in the notes. Jordan was telling these horrifying stories of women, girls who have been taken to, I think, a forest and raped, and then those military guys forced them to walk back to the village with their underwear on their heads as a symbol of what happened to them. Like the cruelty beyond imagination, right? So again, like living in a country like this right now, also in the context of what is happening in Europe, closing the borders and not really respecting the right of people who went through hell like this to claim asylum is beyond for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can only agree, right? I'm not an expert on the topic at all, which is probably also due to the fact that it is hard to access. But just generally speaking, right, like what I'm also always very interested about in situations like this is like who are the ones who are actually supporting which party, right? And I don't know. I mean, maybe this is an effect of what happened over the last years and also especially in 2024. But for me, always one of the first questions becomes who is supporting which part there, right? Like who is being supported by the Russians, who is being supported by the West, because it always feels like there are some ties connected to it. So Sudan specifically feels like one of these areas, again, that have so much internal conflict and struggle, and like other parties are literally just like putting more petrol into the fire, right? So it's a shame. It's just sad, and I agree with Jeffy said. It's just crazy that these power-hungry people then also within the communities actually get the opportunity to unleash their wrath on the civilization there, or the civil population, yeah.
It's always like where the money flows and
exactly.
who is gaining on this thing, right?
Yeah.
Because despite those cruelties, somebody is really
Someone
gaining.
has an interest, right? That's usually what we learned now over the last 20 years.
Okay, so that.
That.
Okay, the ideas. Stop the timer. That was the timer. 7 minutes is up, as we wanted to put a stop at some point to talking about yet another horrible thing. The initial idea was that we will burn the piece of paper, but then we realized we actually have a fire alarm here. So
one right on top of us.
Yes, exactly on top of our heads.
Do they work?
So
do they ever work?
Don't tempt us to try.
It's Greece.
It would be very entertaining, I guess, in the episode if suddenly that actually happened. It would suck for the equipment, but
yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna take the next one. And it's Syria, and Syria is Rasheed's idea.
Yep.
And when we were recording it, it's December 12th today? Sorry. 10th, sorry. Yeah. So
it's International Human Rights Day.
It's International Human Rights Day, which is so important in the context of everything we're talking about today. And I think everybody will think that we want to talk about Syria in the context of Bashar al-Assad's regime falling. But it's not exactly what you want to say, right? 7 minutes on the clock.
So, Syria. So I'm not going to talk about what's happening because nobody actually knows. Because it's a little bit sketchy how those guys, they couldn't take over like since 2011. And then they had 1 week to go from that point to that point. And they took everything. So nobody knows who's pushing them, what's going to happen later. I just want to talk about what they discovered, specifically about the political prisoners. So there is an organization called White Helmets. So they are like the firefighters in the Syrian freed places.
Nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
They announced yesterday there is 300,000 political prisoners. 300,000. So imagine, and I was like, how? And then I was watching some stuff, and there is this prison called Duniya, is in Damascus, and in that one is like 3,000. So I was like, okay. So, and then I was watching this journalist, he had a live, and then this girl called him because he was calling everybody, saying everyone who knows, because Bashar al-Assad, he put them in places, very secret places. And then one girl called and she was like, 2 years ago, I was in university and then we saw some policemen come in under the basement of the university, and we were like, why they were there? So she said, we went there, me and my friends, and they were hearing noises and they thought they were ghosts because there were people like, like They were in pain. So, and then another guy was like, no, I was in prison there. So under the universities. And I was also like, but what really fucked me up, this interview with the guy. So they went there and they were speaking to him. Obviously, he was in a bad shape, really slim. His mind was not there. So they took them a while to talk to him. And they were like, since when you were here? And he couldn't answer because he doesn't know. And he was old. He was like in his 60s. And they were like, can you just remember something? And he says, from the time of from Jamil al-Assad. So Jamil al-Assad is the brother, so he's the uncle of Bashar. And Jamil al-Assad, and this guy, like, so the prisoner, he said the date. And that date goes to an event that Jamil did. That was in the 70s. So that guy, because he said he was in a protest, he was in prison since the 70s there in that place.
Yeah. That also.
He said that he has never seen. So, and they were just, and then in this Duniya, so most people, they went there because they said, I know my son was taken there, but they didn't find him when they freed all of them. And then some people started calling and saying they are underground, like 3 floors. And they brought these white helmets, they were digging, and they found these huge doors that you should open them with a code. There's no codes. And the people they live there, they said they feed them once every 2 days. So they were digging for 24 hours to try to get those people to, and there was no electricity, so they couldn't have air because they have the air system. So, and then today I saw that they said we opened it, but we couldn't find any live ones. So the ones they just, and in the first day they found the security cameras in this room in the prison, and they could see that there are so many of them, hundreds of them, but they didn't know how to get to them because it was under the ground, like 3 floors under the ground. And I was like, who does this? Does it really take that much? Like, okay, you want to have money, power, but do you really have to do this stuff to these people? You put a guy there for, I don't know, 50 years in prison. He doesn't even know who is he anymore. For me, that's...
Yeah. You know, when you said the number, 300,000, I thought that those will be political prisoners as, you know, members of the rebel groups that are currently fighting. So whoever was captured is not like a prisoner.
Yeah.
This was, this predates those events.
No,
so
no,
those are political prisoners.
Since 2011. And some of them before. Well, so this guy was from the 70s. Some guys from the 80s. So, but for me, just like how do you live with yourself thinking that you have all those prisoners? Does it really, is it really worth it to be in that chair and have all those people just suffering? I don't know. I cannot.
It is, you know, I mean, people can justify anything, you know, in their head, they are the good people.
Yeah, it's too much.
It's hard. It's really hard to understand, right? And especially what you said. So many of these situations we're confronted now, like you really, what you said, right? You cannot understand how people can go this distance and what happens to these people also in their own minds at a certain point, as obviously this amount of power and these games they must corrupt you in a way we cannot understand or believe it, right? So it's so hard to see these things and try to find a logical kind of conclusion of why it's happening. It just makes no sense for us. It doesn't. And that's what I think is also so hard to then swallow, right? Like to being confronted with all these situations where you just literally have no fucking clue how someone can do these actions, right? Like, is it really worth it? That's the question we always ask. Like, for what, right? Like, it's insane. Yeah, that.
Yeah, it's insane the longer these conflicts last. I remember being teaching history in Philly and doing an activity with our students where we wanted them to vote with their feet. So they sat in the room in particular seats where they normally were, and we would bring up a topic, and then they had to then debate based off of the information that their classmates were defending one position or the other. And it was about the Spring Awakening. It was about like this... like this Arab Spring and all of this stuff. I just said the name of a play, Jesus, a musical. But, and then the students who were defending the Free Syrian Army versus the students who were defending the Assad regime, they were doing it based off information they had available. And it wasn't that they defended it themselves. It was like they had to take that position in the debate. And then at the end, everybody had to move back and forth in the room to see where we'd end up. And they ended up, maybe the people switched back and forth in terms of like, but we ended up 50-50. People didn't really fully grasp where to go, what to do with the information they had. And then, you know, go fast forward multiple years, past the decade, and now the people who we would potentially be cheering for taking Assad out was Al-Qaeda. Like, I mean, like they were the people who we've been fighting wars for multiple decades in other countries over. And now that's the person who's going to be in charge.
Yeah.
That.
Fuck Al-Assad, everyone who really think they can do anything just to keep power, really.
Would you like to choose one? You cannot
Polarization
read my
and extremism.
That's Florian.
Yeah.
No.
So it's...
We put it outside.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's a topic per se, but maybe it's like a consequence of what is happening over... In my head, like, I think it started with... for me personally, it started with like the pandemic, right? I feel like there it just started to go south in the sense that how we treat each other, and like whatever you do, you're either being put into one side of the camp or in the other. Like literally, for example, the ones who didn't want to take the vaccine, right? Like they were treated like they were lepers. Let's be honest. I mean, that's how we treated them. And it feels like this discourse now is just continuing. And no matter what topic comes up, no matter what's the tragedy, there's like one opinion that you should have. And if you're not on this side, then you're on the other side. I think like the polarization, especially also with how we consume media and what's going on, becomes so extreme that this for me is a huge like that in 2024. Because how you can actually solve things is if you have a discourse, if you listen to each other, right? Like trying... Of course, I'm not fully naive, but just trying to break the spiral of hate, right? Like maybe trying to bring the reasonable people into a discourse and not letting like the extremists like continue with their agendas and trying to solve things together, right? But it feels like this is becoming increasingly harder. Yep. People are afraid, so it's easier to scare them, and it's easier to like put populist kind of like topics in a way that they understand it. So, I mean, what you see, right, often left-right diversion. And it just feels like, I don't know, this is not really the point. It's about, like, we're, like, an entity, we're one system that should work together. Yeah. And obviously some people have huge interest in not having us function this way. So instead of, like, a bottom two, like, I feel it's more like... It's getting so top heavy also with just like the people that have power, how much power they have as like individuals. So it's just, I don't know if you feel the same, but for me, this is something that is really like heavy on my mind these days, and what's going on feels just so backward. And I think a lot of people can feel it.
Yeah. And I exactly what you said, and I can feel it because it really terrifies me, because it is not only about having different opinions. Over the last few years, it's literally, maybe as you said, starting from COVID, we started to differ so much in our opinions that we are unable to talk to each other. Yeah. And I remember when we started working on Lesvos, right? Okay, the crisis was pretty heavy, and some people were protesting against refugees' presence. And we thought at that point that, wow, it's so radical, it's so big, and so on. And speaking to locals, we were just like, no, it's not. It's a group of maybe 20 people on the island, but they are loud. People who are either neutral or are just supporting refugees, they just want to do it quietly, so they're not very, very vocal. Right now, it seems like the extremes became the normal. Yeah. And the middle ground is so small that we are like almost incapable of sitting down at the table and speaking to each other.
The middle ground is empty, like nobody wants to go there.
I don't think it is empty. That's the thing. I think honestly, just what's happening is like it also just sells way better to go into one direction, right? Let's be honest. Like how we consume media these days is such fucking clickbait journalism that's like, go as negative as possible so people will read what you actually have in your headline, which is something we also feel, right? Like, who wants to listen to a based conversation? You know, I mean, what we do now, arguably, is also being like, you know what, we had enough also. So we also go into an extreme with saying off to a lot of topics. But I don't know. I think at one point we need to be able to talk to each other again. Like, otherwise, I don't see a lot of hope.
Can I speak on this?
Yeah,
as well?
Of course.
This is so obvious in so many European countries right now, and Sweden is not an exception. Our center-left party, the Social Democrats, have historically been the biggest party, but like a lot of center-left parties in Europe, they're losing so many voters to the right wing now, right? Like with the rise of populism in Europe. And just recently, they came with a proposal for a new party program, first one in 10 years. And they have changed so much in what they say about migration. So going from like having a very open policy towards migration, and they're completely changing it to being much harsher, much tougher. And obviously this is something that sounds better to right-wing voters. But when they do that, when they change their policies to adapt, when they're adapting their language to appease the right wing, they lose then voters, both to the far right and to the far left. So this just causes even more this complete polarization where you can't talk in the middle about things. It's just like either you're here or you're here.
I definitely would want to talk about the madness of, or I don't want to talk about the madness of the United States politics right now, but
come on,
maybe you can goad me into doing it later in the episode. But I just started reading a book called Fault Lines that's about the last 50 years of, if you want to understand today, you need to go back to the 70s, literally 50 years ago, to understand probably like just the cycle right before it, the last time America kind of agreed on things. And how like that the authors are arguing that this is the birth of the divide, from economics to politics to gender to race relations to all of these particular fault lines that have left us in this place where in the past, you know, America would disagree on things and then they would find their way back towards compromise, even if that compromise was pretty fucking ugly. They still found it, and then there was still this kind of like fluidity between being a conservative, but you could vote for a Democrat, or being a liberal, but you could vote for a conservative, a Republican. And there was this kind of like mix and match that was happening all the time. And then after the chaos of the 60s, centered around other international conflicts and other major divides that really left the country polarized about the war in Vietnam, you were left with that we're not even going to try to come back to the center anymore. So everybody just said F you to each other and walked away, and 50 years later we're here. Yeah. This is the argument of this book. It's pretty good.
No, if you remember our friend Boris once telling us that the only thing, and this comes from polling, from research, that the only thing that Americans can agree on from right and left sides is the love for, I forgot the name of this singer, the blonde singer from the 80s.
Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
that she's equally loved on right, left, center, everywhere. Seriously, everybody loves her, and whoever she supports, they would happily go with her. Maybe so. One
Dolly
thing
from
and you, if we're playing celebrity right now, and you're trying to get us to guess Dolly Parton, you went with Blondie.
The Blondie. The Blondie.
Monroe. I was like Monroe. I just want to say something. So I will just say something from perspective of refugees here in Europe, and I think many refugees feel the same as me. We didn't come to this Europe, to be honest. I'm here, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Because this is exactly what we saw in the countries we left from. Like a lot of extremism, two different sides, and then the one who wins will crush the other one, and there you go. You have a dictatorship. So I'm like, I didn't come to this kind of Europe, to be honest. Or where is it going?
I know it's over 7 minutes, but what pisses me off so much, and I think this is part of this, is just this like super simple narrative of, wow, it's the refugees that come and take your resources away. While in the meantime, like the division of wealth globally is worse than it was during the time of the French Revolution. So, and then people buy media outlets to feed you these stories, and which was like, yep, that's how it is. So I think it's just so sad that we also, as people who are actually part of what is being talked about, cannot sit together and figure these things out together, but we just listen to news outlets and political influencers or whatever that tell us what we should believe, and people stop thinking for themselves in so many regards. So yeah, that.
Okay.
That.
Who would like to take the next one?
I can take one.
Okay.
Women's rights.
Okay, that's mine. So somebody will have to stop me from talking about this because my topic is very specific when it comes to women's rights.
7 minutes.
Because I would like to start from the situation of women in Afghanistan, because this was in the news a little bit. But again, as this fast news, because Taliban voted on the new law. And right now, it's not only about women and girls in Afghanistan not allowed any education from the age of 12 above. So all of those who are 13, 14 and older are not allowed to get any education, basically. There are tiny exceptions, but I'm sorry, not that it's not worth talking about, but it's so minor that it doesn't change the situation. They're of course not allowed to leave the house without male companion. They have to cover themselves from head to toes, and we're really talking about full cover. And now they are not allowed to use their voice, meaning it is forbidden for a woman, as the law says, to be heard by another woman.
Voice, like
their actual voice. Yeah. It's not about not being represented in media or something. It's literate. You cannot speak in public so that another woman
less rights than a bird.
Exactly. Another woman cannot hear your voice. So this also, of course, shuts them up from protesting on streets, because it's now highly illegal. It's in law that they cannot do it, because now it's not even that you're not allowed to protest. You're not allowed to say anything. You said something during the protest. It's done, right? We have a right to throw you in prison. And if you think about it, it's not only about protesting and being loud about your rights or anything. It's about everyday activity. You cannot leave, basically, you cannot go to a shop and buy bread if there's another woman next to you. You cannot use this voice. You have to, first of all, go out with another male. So you're even dependent on your super young son to basically be your companion in this journey. There are checks at borders. You just cannot speak if there's another woman next to you. And I'm thinking about because this for me is beyond any level of ridiculousness, any. And I really do not know what can be done about this, because the situation several months ago, it was I think June or July, one of the summer months, the United Nations agreed to speak to Taliban about the situation of women as such. So they had this meeting in Doha, and the United Nations agreed to not allow any feminist organizations or any NGOs into the meeting to voice their opinions and concerns. It was just the UN and the Taliban. And of course, nothing came out of this meeting, right? United Nations got a lot of criticism. So the question is, was it worth it? And they thought that maybe let's take the risk, because we cannot do anything anyways about the situation, so let's take the risk and do it. And then, just 2 or 3 months later, they introduced this law to stop women from speaking. And the only good thing, about this whole thing is that the European Court, European Court of, help me out here, one of the European courts declared that that Afghan women sorry, yes, Jiffy, you remember?
No, was it of the European Court of Human Rights, maybe?
No.
Or of Justice?
Yes, European Court of Justice. Thank you so much.
Of Justice.
Declared that Afghan women can apply for asylum and should be granted asylum just on the base of being Afghan women because of everything that is happening. So you don't have to prove anything wrong that happened to you. It's just that you being a woman from Afghanistan should give you asylum.
Yeah, it's enough oppression. Yeah, it's just
I have no insights in this, but where do you guys think is this hate coming from towards women? I mean, it's clearly at this point, like, it from the outside, it's like, it's hate, right? Like,
I don't want to.
I look at Rasheed because he can explain me sometimes things from Quran, how badly people interpret it.
So this is my perspective, my life. So I'm not saying the whole religion is like this. So when I was a kid and I go with my brothers and my mom and my sister to the mosque, men this way, women this way. This far, it's okay. And then the men can be loud as they can, as possible. You can pray loudly. You can say the prayer loudly. The women, silence. Nothing should be heard from them. And they are next to us. And sometimes we have like this, a piece of, like a curtain, and we know that they're behind nothing. They should not speak. So, and there is also, you cannot have a woman, but also in the Christians, you have not like an imam woman, like a priest. So, because of her voice also and her face. And for me, I don't want to blame religion, but I don't know. Maybe at that time, it should be changed. You should not take
blame the interpretation of religion.
Yeah, also the interpretation. But also at that time, maybe it worked for those people, but doesn't mean that it worked for us. And I know that it doesn't work for anybody because they haven't asked women. And for me, I was always like, why in the hell? And I remember when I was studying Arabic as a kid, and I had a question from my teacher. So, our teacher was teaching us this about the pronouns. He said, if you have 100 women and 1 man, because in Arabic we have you, but it's for only men, and we have another you for women. And he said, if you have 100 women and 1 man, you should use the you of the man. And I was like, but as a kid, you don't know, you don't get it. And later you'll be like, holy shit.
But do you think, I mean, obviously it also stems just from the fact that, like, these countries, I mean, Afghanistan is not doing well, right? Like, generally speaking, like, economically, obviously, since the takeover, but they were also left in a state where, like, they were just a victim of wars that were also fought on this kind of, again, macro level with Russia, America, whatever. So, what I don't understand, and I would love to understand better, is, like, why they don't realize in this moment that, like, you're so dependent on a country, especially, like, if you want to bring it up again, especially on the women, right? Like, I mean, every country that is blossoming is treating their women good. You know, it's like one of the biggest factors you see in actually bring countries up. So it makes no sense, right? Also from the perspective of how to run a country.
Can I just add very, very quickly that obviously hatred towards women is something that is growing immensely, also in Europe and in the US, in right-wing communities, especially amongst young right-wing men. So unfortunately, it exists in general in 2024, and it's not just in the Muslim communities or in those countries. So
interesting what you're saying.
Yeah, fuck that.
The Taliban.
I was just going to say very quickly, if we really want to see the impact, you said the one positive that came out of this was that this refugee status of asylum, immediate, automatic, just because you're an Afghan woman. I wonder, let's talk to our Afghan female students waiting for asylum for years now in Germany and see how long it takes them to actually get that approval. Because that's and they're just waiting and waiting and waiting. So that.
I loved what our previous guest, what's her name, Daniela, she said, call me old school, but I thought that we cannot deal with a criminal organization like Taliban. Like, why are you talking to them?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. This is Doug from ReFOCUS. Many of you probably know that for the past 8 years, myself and my wife, Sonia, have been working here in Greece, supporting refugees and asylum seekers to develop media creation skills and have a chance at pursuing careers in media. And this has been a life passion for us. But the earliest stages of this on the island of Lesvos in 2016, motivated us to do something. We thought, how could we as individuals do something to change the situation, which was young people from lots of different places in the world who did not have access to education, who were not being provided any formal opportunities for skills training. And so we created ReFOCUS as a way to change that narrative and change that reality. And we are now here 8 years later with an international network of labs in Greece, in Poland, and in Germany. But that's not possible without really, really consistent support from individuals just like you. And so in this giving season, we're really hoping that you can find it in your bank accounts and find it in your hearts to support the expansion of our programming. The work that we do and the money that we receive, we do not receive money from governments. We receive the predominant amount of support from individuals just like yourself. And that money goes to cover the costs of our programming, the overhead of our labs, and the employment of our most seasoned media creators, those who went through our program and now are teachers. We're very different than the schools that you have back home, where you have endowments and you have an opportunity for families to support their next generation kids who are going to the same school they went to. We don't have that luxury. And so we have to do it as a community. And we are very thankful for all the support that we've received to date. And we hope that you can continue to support us into the future.
So, okay, again, past the time, but I want to say one more thing, because we spoke about women in Afghanistan, but the situation of women is really, really horrible. And I was asked today when I said we're going to speak about so many things, and one of the things I put into this pile was the situation of women in Afghanistan. It's like, why Afghanistan? Somebody asked me, why do you feel so passionate about this? Actually, I don't know. I think it's because we have so many students in our program that are from Afghanistan, our team members, but also I think if you think about this, is there a worse place in the world to be to be a woman than Afghanistan? Right now, when it comes to there are very dangerous places, right? Conflict zones when it's really horrible to be a woman. But when it comes to consistent denying of rights, there's no worse place on earth than Afghanistan to be a woman. Having that said, there are so many horrible places. And I just wanted to say one thing so that people can also follow up on certain things that are happening in the world right now. For example, the situation in Iraq, which we thought is maybe a little bit past those things, those laws, but it's not. There has been a proposition made to the parliament to lower the legal age of girls to get married to... You want to guess how young the girls can be, according to this proposition, to get married?
Probably something like 9.
Not really.
Yeah.
9.
It's
9.
Ugh.
9, for God's sake. You could be... it's, again, the situation of a child's bride, right? 9, you're a child. I'm pretty sure you can imagine you have in your family somebody, a girl that is 9 years old, and you know how they look like, how they play. They're not even close to looking like women. And when you think so about this, like about the consequences for this girl's health, but also for her education in the future, it's obvious that this is the end of education for her and any type of intellectual development. So I'm angry about all of those things that are happening to women in the world. That's why I put so many of those into this pile. So that, and yes, I'm giving the right to choose to you, Rasheed, to choose another topic.
But one last thing, I know we went over topic here, but like,
if you want to talk about women's rights, please do.
Yeah, we have 2 members of our core team here, Ellie and Suda, Iranian. They're not in the recording with us right now, but they'd be fiery right now if they were in this room talking about women, life, freedom, talking about the challenges that everyone in Iran still faces, and the fact that it was easy for the rest of the West to just be super solidarity, and then where are we now? It just dissipated so quickly. And I remember being here in Athens the first year when it started, it was madness in the streets. Everyone tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in the streets supporting them, showing solidarity in Berlin, all over Germany, all over America. And a year later, we were at the rally in Syntagma Square here in Athens. And it was like we had to convince people as to why we were gathering. No one understood what we had to hand out flyers and wear T-shirts, and people were coming up to us as in like, "What are you talking about? What's your issue, right? Is it about rent control?" I mean, they had no idea what the was going on, and it was just like so quickly, it's so fast, and we're very much like just a little bit less than 50 years removed from that revolution, and what is Afghanistan going to look like in 50 years if this gets to stand, if this is allowed? I mean, it is a literal Handmaid's Tale going on right now. Mm-hmm. The shit that's happening there, it's fucked up. It's so unbelievable. And but if you throw all the energy towards that and then you overshadow and ignore the things happening in Iran and let that continue, I don't understand where we are. Like, I don't even understand how anyone can really connect with these international norms and international rules and international laws if we're going to allow that shit to stand.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying this.
And I'm afraid it's going to happen in Syria because it seems the same way they took power. Mm-hmm. Everybody left, and then these people came and took power. I hope it's not the same.
Okay. That.
All right. New topic. All right. Okay. Disinformazione. Disinformation from Doug.
Okay, so I could talk for more than 7 minutes on this, but I would
Is
really...
Is this because you're American?
Yeah, because right now, holy shit. Yeah. But I would really love to hear some of your takes on how do we solve this issue, because I have a particular project 2025 of my own, and but I would like to share it at the end. I'm wondering if any of you have a solution to what's going on. So disinformation, misinformation, this whole fucking lying. Call it what it is. They're fucking liars. What do you do with liars when those liars use the lie to gain power and money and influence and control of our entire planet? What do we do?
Mm-hmm. Okay, before we go into this, I think there's this distinction that we have to make, because there are people who spread lies on purpose, and there are people who spread hatred, but they believe that this is truth, that they maybe spread also pure lies, but in their heads this is the truth, right? And here's the big problem, because I think that this second category is larger. This is their truth in their head, and what you're going to do with them, how are you going to convince them? This is also going towards Florian's topic about polarization in the world right now. People are so convinced about their rights and their ideas being the right ones that it's impossible to sit down at the table and speak to them. One conclusion. The second thing, since this is a podcast about people on the move and issues related to refugees, I want to say something I saw on the wisdom board, meaning Instagram. So I cannot give the credit to anybody, but something somebody posted was that refugees are the greatest gift to our society. Not because of their contribution to the economy, as some people say, but because you can blame absolutely everything on them. You want to win elections? Blame something on refugees. They cannot really defend themselves because they do not have a right to vote. They cannot actually speak freely in many countries. So the easy thing to do, right? I do not have a solution for this information. I'm sorry, I really do not.
I have.
Well, I would like to say, fuck you calling Instagram the wisdom board. But
sorry, wisdom board. Well, I didn't call TikTok the wisdom board, so.
So, this is what I do. I would create a ministry of fact-checking. It's a ministry where if a politician is speaking, I would send like a group, and they sit there and they record what he's saying, and then they go to this room and they just study what he said, and then the next day they go on air and they say this was wrong, this was right, this was wrong, and they debate. Like, we really solve it. Like, how much you're gonna spend on this ministry? Nothing. Like, you just have. I think we can. At least we know that I don't know what you're going to do with it. They go to jail. I don't know, but at least the people know that this guy was just
Rasheed,
lying.
But also,
I wish that would work. I feel like, unfortunately, there's a larger issue of sometimes it's not enough to know what the truth is or what the fact is.
That's a start,
I think we're
at
in a
least.
situation where it is,
Yeah.
but the polarization is so large that people don't care about the facts anymore. They only want the story that's going to be what they already think or what they already agree with. But it is really interesting that we are talking about this as people in media, as journalists. What do you do when you've completely lost a whole section of people? They don't trust you anymore. They don't believe in you anymore. And they're choosing not to watch like state media or like objective media, but to find these other people that are just saying the things that they want to hear.
But is state media really objective? I mean, at one point, right, like we also need to talk where this information comes from, right? Like historically, the winner tells the story. We know that. If you look back just like 20 years, what America did with Iraq and doing fucking focus groups on what would sell best, that they can have the war, then like 2 years later. I just think at this point it also becomes a question of like, what is the definition of actual free press and does it even exist? Because I think as soon as you have the borders of a state involved, they have their own interests and there isn't really free press. Like if you look at what's happening on all the major news outlets, but also on all the other platforms, it's basically the same. Like information is being used to promote an interest, right? And that has happened since the dawn of time. So it's a really hard thing to figure out what is actually the good information. I mean, do we have a common goal? Is there something we want to work towards together that would be like information also worth sharing that would benefit as a whole? Or is it always just going to be, I have an interest, let me figure out an agenda, how I can create also information around this agenda so then people buy into what I want them to believe. And I don't have a solution for that. The Ministry of Fact-Checking sounds good, but then if you have this ministry in North Korea, not sure if they're going to check their facts factual. So, I don't know, man.
We have a good friend who lives in Berlin, and every morning, initially I thought it was cool, and then I thought a little bit harder on like how I feel so much sympathy and empathy for Nick. He's a journalist from America who used to do a lot of work in Russia, and now can't do work there anymore. But his mornings start with fact checking. He does fact checking for like a job.
For a living. What?
But that's what he does every morning, and I'm thinking like, you're ruining your coffee. Oh my God! Like what could you possibly be eating right now that would not just like taste like shit in your mouth because of what you're reading and the things you're watching? And then he shows me his social media feeds as a result of the things that he has to watch. And oh my God, it's just disgusting. It's terrifying. And he's like, yep, here's another one. And then he just sends them to me all the time. I'm like, well, at least it's not tainting my non-existent social media feeds. But I don't really want to turn on any of these wisdom boards and find this shit in there. But every time he sent me something, and I would then pass it along to people who right now inside our immediate circle are falling for these types of things. They just as Yeffy's saying, they just like refute it immediately. They just kick it away. They believe like really, really crazy things just simply because one person said it on YouTube, but they will completely disavow anything that ever came from any organization, any institution, any university, any seasoned journalist, any publication. I don't know how you reach those people unless you do it through entertainment. And here comes my Project 2025 plan. Because I remember being a kid and seeing a movie that was just like, wow, this is amazing. And I remember reading a lot of Stephen King when I was a kid. And he wrote a short story underneath a different pen name called Richard Bachman. And he wrote something that eventually became a big blockbuster movie called The Running Man. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen The Running Man. It stars the Governor, Schwarzenegger. The concept is, and get this, it's the year 2025. And in this dystopian future, people are held in prison, work camps, and they are then put on a game show. And on the game show, they are forced to survive. And if they could survive, they earn money. So it's a little bit like Squid Game, right? Like stay alive and you get all the money in the end. But you have to fight mercenaries, and you have to fight all these like crazy lunatics who are trying to kill you at all costs. And a lot of the people who are put into the work camps, they're maybe refugees, or maybe they're just political dissidents or political prisoners. And the one character that Schwarzenegger plays, he's seen as an innocent guy to him and his people, but he's been branded Ben the Butcher. So he's been seen as like a war criminal, and so he deserves all these penalties and all these things to happen to him. So enough of a plug of Stephen King, but it really inspired an idea that we could just have something called The Lying Man, right? And instead of, and we just,
see where this is going.
you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's entertainment, and we got a lot of liars in chief. We got a lot of liars out there that seem to feel very comfortable with just saying whatever the hell they want if it's going to get their agenda pushed through. So let's let them go onto the game show. They want the media attention. They want the spotlight. They want the spectacle. So let's let them go out there, and let's let the Family Feud kissable dick dude we'll bring back his hologram or something. He could be the host of the show again. And let's let all of these fucking liars go out there, be in the show. But here's the trick. For them to survive, they have to tell the fucking truth. And if they don't tell the truth, then they suffer some sort of would you rather fate. So there'll still be like a little bit of a democracy where you get to choose.
One of the favorite games ever.
Yeah, would you rather, like what would you rather? Like you're going to have a penalty for lying, and then you get to choose, your torture.
Would you rather
and
be a
won't
woman
kill
in
you.
Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Or in Iraq.
Yeah.
Or a child in Gaza?
Yeah. Yeah, we get to, you get to choose your fate.
Yeah,
and it will
based
still
on the consequences they inflict on to other people, that would be great, right?
Yeah.
Like what Sheffy just said, put them in the spots that they create, and then see how great of a time they have there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it also kind of works into Rasheed's idea about there being like this ministry of truth or whatever you called it, right? Fact checking, right? So this ministry or this concept, they could be the people who are somehow involved. They're like the panel, right? And they're like the truth sayers in Dune, where they could just, click their fingers together and then see what's true and what's not. And they can read the minds of the people, and they ask them very pointed questions about what they are doing, what they're guilty of, what did they know when they did it. And if they lie, well, then here come the penalties. And if they tell the truth, well, they've exposed themselves. And everyone will then know it's true because they had to say it to survive. The Lying Man.
The Lying Man.
I forgot to turn on the timer, but I'm pretty sure we're more or less. And that's a pretty optimistic
this is the
way.
preamble. We're just getting started.
That's kind of a cool and pretty optimistic way of finishing this segment. Creative one, that for sure.
Consider this podcast our copyright because this is in production. Pre-production, sorry. It's in pre-production, so it's coming soon.
Exactly that. Okay.
So, by the way, sorry, the liars.
Problem with refugee documents.
Oh, that's
Rasheed
mine.
Ghali, and I think we all have some things to say about this, but
so this is personal, and also it's happening to many people.
I think you have to really explain what we mean by that, because this was a surprise even to me, and I discovered it last year that this is such a big thing because of our personal projects, because people don't have zero idea what this is. So please say and bring examples.
So I'll explain, the law in Greece. You get your documents, your residency is for 3 years, and your passport is for 5 years. So they have a law that before the expiring date, let's say 1st of January, 3 months before, you have to make this application and send it to them, and then you wait. So 3 months before. So so for me, my document was going to expire in October, so I should have done this in July. I did it. I was waiting. That was 2023. October, July 23. We are in 2024, so that's a year and 2 months, 3 months. I thought it's just me, so I went to the lawyer. I was like, what the hell is going on with my papers? Why I cannot have my papers? I have so many things to do. And he said, you think you're alone? And I remember I went to him after 4 months, so I was waiting, and he said there are some people waiting 6 months, 9 months. I was like, what? And I thought, I cannot even handle it if it's a year. Now it's a year and 2 months. The issue with this is, I had another bank account And one time I did a gig for someone, I think it was for comedy, and they sent me money there. And I was like, oh no, why did you send me money there? Because I don't have the ATM card. And then I went to the bank and they told me, you need to renew your papers. I was like, is this the government or what? Like, you should talk to your guys. They didn't give me my pay. So my money was there, but it was not a lot. It was like 150. And then I met one of our students here. He was with me. He went to the island. He worked for 6 months. He got like 3,500 euros in his bank. He came here. They did not renew his paper. He went to the bank. They said, you cannot take your money
out because your documents are not
he
updated.
Slept in the street while having 3,500 euros. He was sleeping in the street. He was calling people, can I please stay with you for one night? And he was explaining to them. So I don't know. I mean, just for me, that are we, because that gives you, because I remember when I did my my interview for the asylum, the first one, you should be scared because you're waiting. They will accept you or no. And then once you get it, they say to you, you are protected by the Greek government, and you feel so safe. And then 3 years later, finish, and you go to renew your stuff, and then you're waiting so many months.
But that's Greek bureaucracy.
And I was like,
it's just
no,
but that's beyond. That's beyond. How can you wait a year and a half to renew your papers?
A friend of mine was making a joke. He said, maybe they don't believe me anymore. And then he was calculating. He said, if they send a guy to Sudan to go and, fact check me and see if my story really, he would come in 2 months. If they really investigating. So for me, it's like, am I protected or not? So I had planned to go visit some friends in Italy last year. No, my papers are not there. Now, if I don't have my ATM card and it's valid until 2028, the money I'm getting from ReFOCUS, it's gone. It goes there and it's gone. So if I lose this ATM, my future is gone. Like, I cannot pay my rent, I cannot do stuff. So they don't, but also like the bank, they don't know that this is from the Greek government. I don't know, there is no connection when I go to places in Greece, like these ministries, they don't communicate at all. They just...
Yeah. This is one of the stories, and there are so many stories, and I will just say very quickly one. So one of our team members and a friend, she thought she lost her ID, and she was desperate to find it. She couldn't find it. So after several hours of looking for it, she was really destroyed. She was crying, almost panicking, and I was like, don't worry, we're going to find it. We were looking, all of us, we couldn't find it. And I was like, okay, you're going to file for new ones. Okay, it's going to take maybe a month. It will be fine. You're going to get it. And she was like, she looked at me like I'm crazy. And obviously I was ignorant. I was not aware of what is going on. It's like, no way. They will never give it to me within a month or 3 months. This is my only identification here. If I'm stopped on the street by the police, I'm immediately taken to the police station, and I can spend time in jail just because I look as I look. I do not look Greek, and I can be considered illegal here and have so many problems, and they will not give it to me in such a short period of time, because they believe that refugees, whenever they report that they lost a document, they probably sold it to smugglers. And this is the government or the officials' punishment for doing so. So it's a massive collective punishment of everybody who could genuinely maybe lost the document or something, but nobody believes them here anymore. And this was like, oh my God. At the same time, my sister was coming to visit me, and she realized that her baby, that was only like 8 months old at the time, didn't have a passport. She's like, oh shit, I forgot to, make a passport for my baby or an ID. So she went to an office in Poland, and they got the passport, it was an ID, within 2 weeks. So, she made it before, they came to us at the same time. Our team members are so stressed because they cannot get an ID. And I wrote you a letter how important it is for us as an organization to continue our operation and have you having the passport, and still nothing is working, and you cannot even really go there and talk to them and present your arguments.
I think, again, with this, it comes also to like who has an interest in this actually working, right? And honestly, Greece seems also to be the play ball so often of Europe. Like in all these regards, I feel like at the moment Europe doesn't even really want that the refugees have all these rights protected properly and, good, like, let's not talk about Greek bureaucracy. It's bad for everyone. But like, if there's no interest coming from other parties that the refugees actually gain these like documents quickly, then again, the refugees are the perfect victim. They cannot do it themselves. They don't have like voting rights, so you're stuck. And that's why it's so important to talk about these things and support from our side as much as we can.
My previous lawyer.
It's the alarm, but it's okay.
My previous lawyer told me. So he told me off the books, he said this government is getting their revenge from the previous one for giving refugees asylum. Because it was not this one. It was the previous one. I don't know what's his name. And people thought that guy was bad. He was actually good for refugees. When he came, he opened for us as a refugee. People took their papers very easy. And then they are saying, you gave them papers, we're not going to renew it. Let's have them like wander around. And if we catch them, they go to jail. Yeah.
On top of this, I want to say that there's also a mess. I'm pretty sure that most of it is done on purpose. But for example, on some of the islands, they put police stations, units inside camps. So if you apply inside the camp, you will get your documents after receiving asylum pretty relatively fast. But if you apply outside before the system was introduced inside camps, like nothing. You will wait for like a year and a half for like your first ID, and people who are in the camp was like, what's the system like? Isn't it going to the same place to make those documents? Like make a line, like go like one by one, and it's not. So I think it's both, but the dominant one is for sure done on purpose here. I just cannot believe that this is a coincidence.
Let's pick this one. Lesvos.
Okay.
Where it all started.
This is mine, but it's not actually only Lesvos. I just put it as a general topic because I wanted... start my clock. I wanted us because so many of us were on the islands and experienced what is happening there. And for me, this topic was important to at least mention because we simply did not have... anything about it in the podcast for a long time, and it's completely forgotten. Completely. Do you guys remember those times from 2017, 18, when we had journalists coming to the island nonstop, and then the fire of Moria, literally like groups, every places, in every hotel, everything was taken, everything. Everybody wanted to report on the islands. Those were the hubs of the crisis. And now there's literally nothing. You cannot find anything, not even this breaking news. We're always pissed about media not reporting about stories. Do not stay on the stories long. Just leave once the breaking news is gone. But now there are people drowning at the shores of Europe, Lesvos, Samos. It's just like yesterday, another person drowned, several are missing, so probably also dead. Last week, 5 days ago maybe, again, a group of 8, I believe, drowned on the coast of Samos. And nobody is reporting about this. There is an organization called Aegean Boat Report that is struggling tremendously because of finances, like we all do, but is still trying to report on the situation, prepare really credible information, because we really don't have it at all anywhere. And for God's sake, this is people's lives, right? People die there. Nobody, and it's not only about this situation, but there's no possibility of burying those people. Their families will probably won't be notified about what happened to their loved ones. And because it's an emotional topic for me as a person who stayed and worked there for a longer time, I just cannot believe that this is not making the news at all. And I feel like we are obliged to say something about this. Also in the context of the pushbacks, that part of those deaths are caused by the weather right now, super strong wind in this part of Mediterranean. some of those people have been pushed back so many times, and probably some of those deaths are are an outcome of those pushbacks.
I mean, I think everyone around this table could talk about Lesvos. We've all done something there, been there, experienced it in different ways. But, you know, like 6,400 some odd people this month alone have arrived on the Greek islands. Mm-hmm. And almost 20,000 have been pushed back illegally. So, like, and then of the 6,400 that made it to the islands, they've moved 4,400 of them into total obscurity in the mainland. So they're in camps far removed from city centers, like super far away. I think some of our students live in Malakasa camp, and they travel 45 minutes by train just to get here to take classes each night. But, you know, how many people are going to do that when they live that far away from an urban center? They're most likely going to be stuck in some place without public transit, without financial supports to get in and out. And the NGOs that are allowed to support people are not allowed to be in those spaces or can't afford programming and capacity to be in the vicinity of those camps to provide those supports. So for every person who lands on an island and gets relocated to the mainland, they disappear somewhat. I mean, they are there in Greece, their numbers, but they're not seen on the streets every day. So they're also not, those camps are not reported upon. There are no cameras inside.
Well, goal achieved, right? I think now what we saw over the last year, so that's at least since I arrived on Lesvos, was also like the decrease in support towards the people there, from Europe, from the media, from the Greek state, of course, especially. But again, it really feels like whose intention is to do that, and it really feels like Europe is at this point not this safe haven that people flee to. It doesn't really work, and you know, there are, of course, a lot of political motivations behind that. But the reality is it's not working for anyone, right? Like pushing people back to the sea, long, midterm, whatever you want to call it, it's not going to work. And especially if we continue to create these areas globally that actually then force people to flee, and we deliver them weapons. So it just... Lesvos is just one small kind of island that is a symptom of what's going on. But I think we can all agree that, like, there needs to be massive change in this regard.
Yeah, but the massive change that they put into action a year ago, almost to the day, was the new migration pact, which I would ask every single listener and viewer of this podcast to do a little research and find out what the European governments agreed upon very quickly. They barely discussed this and then rammed it into action before the Christmas break, the holiday break. And boom, here we are a year later, and I can't even remember the number of times that I've seen it reported about in international media outside of NGOs ringing the alarm bells. And this is a, you know, continent-wide, regional-wide policy that leaves people in serious danger at the borders and in other places. And it's unacceptable. Again, we were talking earlier about international human rights and norms and laws, and it just feels like we just threw that shit away somehow.
Yeah, fuck that.
Fuck that. Fuck that migration pact. And fuck these pushbacks.
There are so many things that today we said fuck that to, and we still have so many that we could discuss. But yeah, there is a time limit here. And I would really like to end with something positive that happened this year. So does anybody have something in their mind that was really, really positive that happened this year?
Really, really positive.
Really, really positive. Rasheed, I'm counting on you.
I would say, because I feel connected to this case, is the Thai government, like the one about statelessness. They want to end statelessness. 400,000 people. Some people say more. I hope that goes well. They announced it this year in November. That's a huge thing. I hope they can go and do it, because it's very important. Yeah, that's very positive for me this year. Yeah.
Good. Yes. Yeah. Something really specific. Okay, guys.
Is everyone going to give a positive?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have.
You don't have one?
I know I'm such a negative person.
I think it's a negative for me. It's definitely a negative for you. It's a negative for every Philly and Yankee fan that Juan Soto signed a fucking contract with the Mets. But it's a positive for Jon Stewart. So I don't know. Good on you, John.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get what you've been dying to have your whole damn life, and hopefully you follow Fractured.
And we all love Jon Stewart, so
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I thought you were
massive
talking about
thumbs
the
up.
word, like the world, and then baseball.
Yeah,
Okay, I can talk about football. Napoli,
Napoli.
Barcelona.
we need
Well,
to
it would be
find
great
those
if-
small things that make us happy,
Yeah,
right?
it would be great maybe if Juan Soto could say, "Oh, you know what? I'll give you my $756 million, and we'll give it to human beings instead of one motherfucker."
Yeah,
Okay, guys,
Jon Stewart, damn it.
that was so fun.
that was so
Really,
fun.
We should do this very often.
Yeah, let's do it
Yeah,
every first Monday of the month.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
We could also-
let's just bitch about stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could also bring everyone else that's out there in the podcasting universe in the world. Anyone else wants to jump in,
yeah, of course.
make a statement, give us a topic, make a comment. We can kind of do it like an inbox, and then we can all mull over your issue.
Even if you don't agree with us, just
Well,
come
that
and
would be
Exactly.
so-
I think that would be
Yeah,
great if you
yeah,
also
because
have
I was
people-
thinking
Okay.
about
Yeah.
we
Okay.
don't have to agree with
So-
anyone. So
But
come.
please, on a level, I mean, now we were also really harsh, right? But if people actually want to say something or talk with us about these topics, very welcomed. And what
Yeah.
we said, I think, very important that we are able to also listen to people on the other
Just be
side, right?
respectful,
Like
yeah,
there
you
are.
know.
So
We can disagree,
We
but
need
just
to
be
have a
respectful.
basis for
Respect each other.
discussion.
But know that if you're going to say something, the Ministry of Fact
Fact
Checking
checking is on you.
and the producers
Okay.
of The Lying Man will be listening.
So maybe, guys, let's end it this way. Let's encourage or invite somebody who disagrees with us to join us in our just general core values to discuss respectfully, but discuss, talk, and present your arguments. We had this friend actually on Lesvos who was going to those demonstrations of people being very anti-refugees, and he was just like, I'm always going and trying to find one person who would speak with me, and
Yeah.
we would sit there on the main square and just talk. Not many people wanted to talk to him, unfortunately, but I was just like, really, are you really losing your time on those people? And he was just like, necessary, how else, right? So please, if you disagree, reach out to us. It would be lovely to make some kind of a series of podcasts and discuss the issues and just disagree with respect and dignity. Yeah. Okay. Let's hope less fucked up things happen in 2025 than in 2024. Yes, that would be very, very desirable. Yes, definitely. Okay, guys, this is the last episode of 2024, so we would like to thank our sponsors, which is Aperture, Choose Love, and Alliance. Thank you very much to those who donated to ReFOCUS Media Labs on Patreon and through ReFOCUS Media Labs page. You can still do it, and we mentioned it several times that resources are extremely scarce when it comes to NGOs, people who work in humanitarian world. So, as always, there's a link to our donate page. If you find this podcast valuable or our core mission, which is teaching media skills to refugees and asylum seekers and any actually marginalized community, please consider supporting us. Thank you and see ya in 2025.
Peace.
Merry Christmas and Happy
Merry
New
Christmas.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Fuck 2024.
Hi guys, this is Sonia, and as many of you know, for the last 7, almost 8 years, ReFOCUS has been my passion project that I have been making happen together with my husband Doug. And over those several years, we managed to graduate hundreds of refugees and asylum seekers with media skills certificates. And we are so proud that so many of them are pursuing their careers right now or go to higher education and are able to really make their dreams come true, contribute to the economies of the countries they decided to settle, and that they have lives, they deserve, they dreamt about, or they are on the path to do so. And yes, this is a donation appeal because projects like this do not just happen. They need funds. And this is my personal appeal to you. if you can afford this, please consider donating to ReFOCUS. We're really doing really good job with the money we're getting. Our main goal in hiring policy is to hire from the community, from refugee community. So most of the staff are actually people who are refugees, asylum seekers, who have wonderful skills by now, either because they got them in their home countries or they got it with ReFOCUS. So if you feel like this mission aligns with your values, if you care about refugee causes and you can, please donate. If you cannot, please consider organizing a screening, talking to people, your friends, your family about this project, because it is really awesome and it just needs a little bit of support. Thank you.